Hey guys, it's Shelby, and today I wanted to make a video talking about the most random shit that I do. There's a lot of talk in the sustainable living community about living consciously, but not a lot of people talk about how much that impacts your life when you start looking at every little thing you do and every little thing everybody else does and start analyzing it for what the more sustainable way to do something could be, or how literally anything could impact the planet. I'm a very neurotic person. I overthink absolutely everything, and the level of consciousness that has to do with sustainability has made me think about a lot of different little minute things that I tell my friends and family to do, and they roll their eyes at me and they think I'm annoying. So now I'm here to tell you about them. But seriously, all of these things are going to be really, really small things that seem kind of irrelevant, but in the grand scheme of things, on a repeated basis, they could have a significant impact on the environment. And also, just my goal for every video I make is kind of hoping that you learn something new. Like maybe no matter how advanced you are or how beginner you are, you watch one of my videos and you learn something new that you can implement into your life. So I think these really random, teeny tiny things could be helpful for so many people. And they are really small, but pretty much all of them are free or save you money. So that's also really cool. I'm not gonna ramble on for too much longer. We'll get into it in just a second, right after I say a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video without actually interfering with what we're gonna talk about. If you're looking to build an online store or website, make sure you do it with Squarespace, and you can get a discount with my link in the description. All right, let's get into my neurotic thoughts. So this first thing actually started way back between high school and college when I had a summer job that I was working, but it was not very close to my house. And I think they were paying me barely over minimum wage. Like I think minimum wage was like $7.25 and I was making $8 an hour, but I was driving an hour to get to this job. It was my old orthodontist that my cousin worked at, so she got me the hookup kind of thing. And so these tips are only really going to apply if you have a car and you drive. Here in Texas, it's kind of mandatory. But if you don't have a car and you don't drive, then just like listen to these tips for anybody you know who might. But back then, my goal was not necessarily to make my carbon emissions the lowest that they could be, but this definitely applies to the same way. And I was driving an Explorer at the time, the car, my first car my parents gave me. It was very, very fuel inefficient. I think its max miles per gallon was meant to be like 18 or something. So the game I played with myself was, how high can I get my MPG driving back and forth from this job? There were a few things I learned, such as taking routes that have less turns is going to be a lot more fuel efficient. Because if you think about it, to take a turn, you have to slow down and then speed back up, and that uses a lot more gas than just like straight shots. So if there was a route that was a little bit slower, but it was more straight, I would always choose that one. Also prioritizing left turns over right turns because they take a lot less gas to come in and out of than a right turn. These are really random things, but also one of the things I used to do and I still do now, because with my Prius, there's a little animation that tells me if I'm using the battery or if I'm charging the battery and if I'm using gas. And it's completely a game. I just play a game with my car all day trying to see how little gas I can actually use to get from point A to point B, but paying attention to any lights that are ahead of you. So if there's a light coming up and you know that by the time you make it to that light, it's still gonna be red, take your foot off the gas. And some people around you will get annoyed by this. Why is this person going so slow? Aren't they going the speed limit? Some people will get really frustrated and zoom past you. And every single time someone does it, you can just laugh and be like, were you in a hurry to get to the red light? Oh, okay. But it saves a lot of gas just paying attention to that. And then whenever you get to the light, accelerating pretty slowly. Keeping your RPMs under 2 will help save a lot of fuel, and obviously saving as much fuel as we can means that a lot less fuel has to be taken from the ground, and then a lot less carbon emissions go into the air. I will tell you that during the summers, I was able to get my car that was meant to only max out at 18 miles per gallon up to 22, which I was very proud of. And it was like a game, you know, to see how high I could get it. So I definitely encourage you guys to start thinking about your driving habits if you do still drive, because I know for so many of us, it is really the only viable option. Doing the best you can is definitely still an option out there for us. So if you don't have a car, but you have water in your house, then this one applies to you. 2 ways we conserve water in this household that I will tell you is, one, something called if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. This is going to take some cooperation from other people who live in your house, because maybe they don't want to walk in the bathroom and see your number one chilling in the, toilet. But just making that small switch can bring down your water usage in your house by quite a bit, which again saves you money and also helps conserve our clean water resources. And then the second thing you can do is collect the water pre-shower. So the water that's falling from your shower before it's heating up, use that water for something else in your home. Again, this is completely free and actually going to save you money. You can use that water for all sorts of different things around your house, but that will save you money and it's completely free. Or maybe you're just a really weird person and you don't mind taking cold showers, so you don't have to worry about the water before your water gets hot. That's me. I'm a weirdo who takes cold showers. Okay, these next two are pretty similar to each other, but they really get on my nerves. So if you guys know the automatic doors that are on a lot of shopping buildings, restaurants, all sort of things. A business, any sort of business can have those automatic doors. Something you should think about is walking away from those doors if you're not going into them. So if you're walking past an automatic door and it's opening up to the outside, specifically here in Texas, we're having to air conditioning all of these buildings, right? Can you imagine how much money and electricity it takes to cool and heat those giant, huge buildings that exist? I don't want to think about it, but I also would like to not be part of it. So if you can walk away from an automatic door as to not have it open when it doesn't need to, that's going to mean that less of that cool air is escaping out into the heat and less of the heat is getting into the store, so that they're not having to cool and like change the temperature and use all this electricity to balance out the temperature when that door is opening and closing. I can't imagine how much electricity is used just because of those stores that have the automatic open and close doors. Like every single time I see them open and close, I just see electricity like flowing in and out. And then obviously there's also the electricity for the door opening itself. If you're not going in that store, then step away, don't let the door open. Again, this is my neurotic brain thinking of absolutely everything I can. And this next one is similar, but it really pisses me off, and not just for reasons of like sustainability. So whenever you go into the freezer aisles at a store, if you're shopping for something in the freezer aisles, don't open the fucking freezer door. If you are that person who has to open the freezer door to think about what you want, I don't like you. So when you open those freezer doors, you open it and the temperature difference between inside the freezer and outside the regular temperature contrasts so much that it ends up frosting over those freezer doors. And if you've ever been to a freezer section at a grocery store, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The doors get frosted over so that the next person that comes and wants to see what's in there can't see it. So they have to open the door, and the process starts all over again of that door getting frosted, and then no one can see into the freezer, and then people are constantly opening the freezer to look inside the freezer, and the freezer is constantly using electricity to keep up with how much you're letting out and any heat that might be making it in. So next time you're looking in the freezer aisles, look through the clear glass door to decide what you want, and then reach in there and grab it. And if you need to read the box, the label on the box, to see if something is vegan or if it has any of the things that you're allergic to in it, open the freezer door, pick out the box, read the box, take out the box, close the freezer door, read the box, decide if you want it, put it back in the freezer or put it in your cart. But for all that is my sanity, do not stand there with the freezer door open. It's wasteful and it's really frustrating when you're trying to look at something and you can't see because someone left the door open before you. This next thing is to cut your product use in half. So if you think about it, you're using a set amount of toothpaste that you think is like the right amount of toothpaste every time you brush your teeth. You use a set amount of shampoo every time you wash your hair. It's what you think you need. But I encourage you tonight, tomorrow, whatever, whenever you're watching this video, cut the use of those things in half and see how it impacts you. I found out that I was using way too much toothpaste to brush my teeth, cut it in half, and now obviously that's going to save me money for when I have to repurchase toothpaste. And also, a lot of resources go into making everything we buy, right? We remember this. All of the things that go into those products have to be grown and shipped and manufactured. There's a lot of energy and resources that go into every single thing you buy, not to mention whatever packaging it is that your items come in. So using a lot less of that product probably won't change your experience, but it can save you money and save the items that have to be made. So I encourage you to try to use a little bit less of whatever it is that you use in your beauty routine or even in your house cleaning products. Try to cut the amount you use in half and see how that impacts your experience. All right, this next one is one that I tell my friends and family all the time and they just get so frustrated with me, but it's actually really important. So this is something called desertification. And this is whenever you walk on like a grassy patch and over time people stepping on those grassy patches, wherever vegetation is, over time it turns into arid land where there's no anything growing on it anymore. It's not absorbing water the same way it did, etc. And the reason this is a problem on a larger scale, but also on a smaller scale, is when a surface actually has vegetation sitting on it, it can slow down the distribution the distribution of water. So we want to have those grasses, those vegetations, those bushes, those trees, whatever it is, because it really helps the entire ecosystem. So if you're walking on a patch of grass and that grass eventually from people walking on it is no longer there, the things that live in the grass are going to suffer, the things that eat the grass and rely on the grass are going to suffer, and hence everything up the food chain will as well. And also it's going to mess with the way water is distributed around the ecosystem. These are things that I learned about in school and I saw in like everyday life. So when there is a concrete patch or like a sidewalk for you to walk on, you should choose to walk on it because it's not going to be destroying the environment and like the ecosystem of the natural environment that is there. Next time you're outside walking, pay attention, and I guarantee you'll see it. This happens a lot at corners, like intersections of sidewalks where sidewalks come like this, and then in between here in this little section, people don't want to walk all the way to the corner and then all the way over, and they'll just cut through here, and you'll see that there's like patches of grass, and then right there in those areas, there's nothing. And like I said, this may seem really small and insignificant, but on a larger scale, it's really important when you think about how much that happens, even if it's a small area. Over the course of a mile, if that happens in a bunch of little places, it can definitely impact the rate of which the ground is able to absorb water, which can lead to more flooding, which obviously leads to so many issues with our natural environment as well as our human built environment. So not choosing to walk in perfectly good grass when there is a trail, like if you're hiking, trying to stay on the path, or if you're just like in a casual walking environment, staying on the path that is there. Desertification has a similar impact as like urbanization. So I'm not sitting here saying we need more sidewalks so that people aren't walking on the grass. It would be ideal if we could just not have concrete everywhere, because obviously that also impacts the absorption of the ground. When concrete covers it and concrete doesn't absorb water, that definitely leads to more flooding, and we saw a lot of that in Houston last year. So I'm not saying we need more sidewalks. I'm just saying that when they're there, utilize them. All right, this next one is something that I bitch about in our house and people get annoyed at me, but it's important. So whoever renovated this house, they put in our kitchen sink knob backwards. So to the left is supposed to be hot and to the right is supposed to be cold, but they reversed it. Whatever. So the natural resting position is to leave it up, like the knob to be up. It's so easy to flip up and down like that. But that's the hot water. So if you're just flipping on and off the water and you don't need hot water, what's happening is you're flipping off the hot water knob. So the hot water heater is starting to heat up water. Regardless of if you have an electric water heater or a gas water heater, it's turning on to heat the water. In general, say you're walking to, the sink to get water for the cats, to refill the cat water bowl. You don't want that water to be hot, but the knob is in the hot position. So you turn it on, the water comes out. The water that comes out is not hot because it has to take time to get there, right? So you don't see the water getting hot, but the water heater is heating the water. It's just taking it a little while to get there. You just wasted electricity or gas or whatever it is that your hot water heater runs on for no reason because you left it in the hot water position. So making sure that when you don't need hot water, you're not using the hot water is going to save electricity or gas or whatever it is that your hot water heater uses. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. We don't want to be using electricity or gas or whatever it is if we don't need to be, right? Similar when we're talking about heating is using residual heat to cook your food. So this means that basically when you're cooking something, if it's really, really close to being done, you turn off the heat and you let the heat that's already there do its job. There's already heat stored in the pot or the pan or whatever you're using. There's already heat stored in the burner, and there's already heat stored within the food. This is something I do a lot in our kitchen, and again, it might seem really, really minute, but when you think about it, if you're using residual heat to cook 3 meals out of the day over a course of a year, that's a lot of energy that you save. So turning things off when they're almost done and letting residual heat do the rest. You can also do this with the oven. It works really, really well in the oven because obviously there's a lot of heat stored in the oven, and if there's just like a minute or two left, you can turn it off, not use any more energy, but get the same results. So yeah, that's called cooking with residual heat. I'm always talking to people in my life about it, so you guys can give it a try and let me know how it goes. And last but not least, I'm going to need you to take out your phone right now. If you're not already watching this on your phone, if you are, stay here. You can do it after the video. But if you're not on your phone, pick up your phone right now. If you have the Uber app on your phone, delete it. I'm gonna tell you why. So I don't use rideshare services at home all that often, but when I travel a lot and I don't know the public transit system and all that sort of stuff, sometimes I do use the ride sharing services. And the reason I told you to delete Uber from your phone is because LYFT is actually a carbon neutral company. LYFT offsets all of the carbon from all of their rides all the time. I don't know how this isn't a more widely known thing, because I feel like a lot more people would choose Lyft if they knew that, but I'm here to tell you that there is a significant difference between choosing an Uber and choosing a Lyft, because Lyft is doing a lot of good for the environment by offsetting all of the rides that people use, and Uber is over here just like chilling. So I highly encourage you to take advantage of using Lyft over Uber. I also always encourage you to use the public transit systems whenever you're traveling. In some places, it's super simple and really easy to figure out, and other places, it's not so much. Like if you go to Portland, it is so simple. We're going back to Portland later this year because Madison has a business trip and I get to go along. But Portland's public transit system is so simple, so easy, so cheap. Other places, not so much. Like Atlanta, when we were in Atlanta, I couldn't figure that system out to save my life. So using Lyft in situations like that is really helpful, and knowing that there is one service that does better than the other, I think is a really good tip. So I'll leave my Lyft discount code in the description if you guys don't already have Lyft, and you can download it, and I get a little bit of money from that for my rides, and I think you get a little bit of money from that as well, so check that out. And yeah, those are all the really random little tips I had to share with you today. Please let me know if you learned something new and if you're going to implement any of these things into your life, and if you have any little bitty weird random things that you do that help the environment, let us know in the comments, and I might mention them in another video like this if you guys like it. Again, I want to give a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video without actually interfering with the video itself. So they are an awesome all-in-one platform to help you build your online store or website. So let's talk about them a little bit. Like I said, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform, so you can look to them to build an online store, website, or even just if you need to purchase a domain. Squarespace makes setting up a website super easy because you don't need to learn coding. They already have some beautiful templates over there that you can customize to be exactly what you're looking for. Squarespace makes it easy to connect your social media and to also take advantage of their blogging tools. You can do email campaigns through Squarespace because it is an all-in-one platform, like I mentioned. With their 24-hour customer service and traffic insight tools, it makes it the easiest way to build a website on the internet today. So when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/Shelbizleee for 10% off of your first purchase.